Hey guys, Will from Boosted Media here. Today we're going to be doing a configuration and setup guide for the new Vision GS wheel from MOZA Racing. So first thing you're going to want to do is open up the latest version of MOZA Pithouse software. Obviously download that if you haven't already. We're going to jump down to this little cloud tab here to make sure that our firmware is completely updated. So if you've already got the latest version of the firmware, it will tell you on all your connected devices here. If you don't, you can click to upgrade all, and that will do what it says. It will update the firmware on everything. Just be aware that the dash on the wheel can take quite some time to update. In our case, it was about 40 minutes it took to do the firmware update. So don't get impatient, don't reboot your PC or disconnect the wheel while it's doing it. And once it's finished, everything will be up and running and good to go. So once that's done, we're going to click on our steering wheel tab just here. And we're going to split this up into a couple of different sections to cover the settings pertaining to the wheel itself and basic usage there, as well as how you can do some stuff with the dashboard. For the first time on a MOZA wheel, you can now completely configure and create your own dashes, which is really cool. So starting off with the wheel here, on the left hand side, just as you've seen with other MOZA wheels, if you're familiar, you have a representation for all the buttons here, so you can make sure that all the buttons are functioning the way they should. You do also have the option here to change colors for your backlit RGB push buttons here too. So all you do is hover over the button you want to change, highlight the color that you want, click on that color, and that will change. Now over on the right hand side, we have the settings for the wheel itself. So we'll just run you through everything here, starting with the dual clutch paddle mode. So you've got 3 modes available. You've got axis combine, which allows you to combine both of the analog paddles into a single axis with a bite point adjustment here. So what you would do is adjust your bite point to correlate with the bite point inside the car that you're driving. So it is going to vary depending on which car you're driving. So when you're starting a race, you'll want to pull both paddles in, and then as the light goes green, you'll release one hand. That'll get you to your bite point, and then you can slowly release the second hand to get the car completely underway with minimal wheel spin. So just adjust that to suit the car that you're driving. That is how the bite point clutch works. Axis split allows the 2 paddles to operate as independent analog axes. So you can assign them to, say, a handbrake and a clutch, for example, or a throttle and a brake if you can't use pedals for some reason. And if you want to, you can assign the paddles as digital buttons too. So it's just an on-off switch rather than an analog axis. So we're going to set that back to bite point for now. Paddle travel, that is just a visual representation of what's going on here. So you can see if I pull both paddles in, it goes to 100%. If I let go of one hand, it's going to drop down to my bite point, and then I can release from there, just as we described before. Now, band knob mode, this assigns the function of your 3 rotary encoder / multi-position switches down the bottom here. So in button mode, which we'll start off with, you can see as we rotate, the number will change. So that is a fixed number. It always corresponds with the same button press inside the game. So this is useful in the context for, say, you're assigning a position to a specific engine map inside the game, for example. It will always correlate with the same position. So if you turn it to position 10, it's always going to be engine map number 10 inside the game. If you change this to knob mode, what that then does is operates as a rotary encoder. So you can see on the screen there, it is now showing a plus or a minus depending on which direction I turn it. So this can be useful for games that don't understand multi-position switches, but does have the disadvantage of not actually knowing which position the switch is in. So say, for example, you open up a session with the switch already in position 10, for example. Position 10 on the physical switch will then correlate with position 0 inside the game and so forth. So in most cases, if the game supports it, you're probably going to want to have this in button mode rather than knob mode. Stick mode, pretty self-explanatory here. For the analog style switch on the right-hand side, you can either assign this as a button, or if you change it to D-pad, it will operate as a up, down, left, and right stick. So that will just depend on the game that you're playing. Some games don't allow you to navigate the menu through button presses. You have to assign it to a D-pad. So that is the reason why that is useful. We're going to set that back to button for now. Then key combination setting. This wheel does have a few ways that you can make adjustments to key settings directly from the wheel without the need to Alt-Tab out of the game. So if you click on setting here, you can enable or disable these functions. And if you hover over each one, it will explain exactly how to perform that function. So this would be a button press for changing this maximum steering angle to 360 degrees. Quite often, if I'm jumping into an F1 race, having just driven something else, I might forget to adjust my steering angle. And if a race is about to start, that can be a pretty serious thing. So having a button combination to quickly switch between those different sensitivities can be a useful thing. So that is what that function does. And then down here, pretty self-explanatory, we've got an adjustment for button brightness and RPM LED brightness as well. We can reset wheel parameters from here as well. So if you mess something up, if you're not sure what you've done, you can reset back to factory defaults by clicking that button. And calibrating paddles is also something that's worthwhile doing the first time that you fire up your wheel, just to make sure that everything is operating exactly the way it should. So then we move across to RPM LEDs. So this allows us to make some configuration changes to the RPM strip across the top here. These are RGB LEDs, which are individually addressable inside the software. So we've got the option for an RPM RPM indicator, pretty self-explanatory, off or just lit up all the time. And we have a couple of different modes available for this as well. So you can see here in mode 1, the color of each light that comes on is independent of other lights. So you can actually assign a color to each individual LED there. In mode 2, only one color is displayed at a time. So it'll start off in one color, and rather than illuminating as a rainbow as it goes further up, all the colors will change depending on the position, so everything looks the same. So just purely up to subjective preference there. You can also choose between a couple of different presets here for engine RPM timing, so early, normal, late, and custom. If you use the custom option, that will allow you to fine tune and adjust exactly what trigger percentage you want for each segment on the strip. And we've got the option here for adjusting by percentage or RPM. So this is just going to be something that you'll fine tune depending on the car that you're driving. So you can see under the current configuration, the first light is going to come on as we reach 75% of our maximum RPM range. And you can adjust the color of each one of these RPM LEDs individually, as we mentioned before. We also have a trigger percentage here for blinking. So that would be where your shift light would activate. And by default, I actually did find that that was set quite low. So what I would suggest is you wind that up to be maybe just 1 or 2% higher than the maximum LED here. And you can also adjust the interval here for how quickly that shift light will flash if you wish to do so. And you also have adjustments here for how quickly you want that shift light to flash and the color that you want that to be as well. So you just hover over it and choose whichever color you want from the wheel. Telemetry LEDs as well, you can switch these on and off. So it's just a simple toggle switch for each one, and that allows the RPM LED strip along the top here to also respond to certain telemetry data. So we're going to have this respond to a couple of things that the car's doing. So if the wheels are spinning, if we're in pit lane, if the pit limiter's on, ABS activating, traction control activating, and DRS being activated, and then also track status as well. So red flag, yellow flag, blue flag, green flag, and white flag. Just gives you a visual representation of what's going on around you on the track. So once you've got this all set up and you're happy with all your settings, you can save those settings, and that will allow you to save all this configuration as a JSON file, which you can then share amongst your friends or the community if you wish to do so. You can, of course, also import other people's settings too. So if you've got a mate that's made a really awesome profile, you can load that in here and it will all just work on your wheel. So that is the settings pertaining to the wheel itself. Let's talk now about the settings for the dashboard. So just taking a quick look at the software here, the dashes that you see on the left-hand side here are the dashes that have actually been loaded to the wheel. The dashes on the right-hand side are additional dashes which are available in the Pithouse software but haven't been loaded to the wheel. So what I would recommend here is don't overload the wheel, only load the dashes that you actually want to use on the wheel. That means you're not going to be fumbling around with a touchscreen trying to find the one that you want. So the way this works is you can swipe up and down to choose between the dashes that are loaded to the wheel, and then you can change pages within the selected dash by swiping right or left. So back to the software now, we do have the ability to adjust the brightness of the display. We then also have the ability to switch on gravity sensing. So if we do that, you can see now the dash will actually adjust its position relative to the angle of the wheel. And as you can see, I don't have this connected to a MOZA wheelbase currently. It's actually using a gyro built into the wheel to make that happen, which is pretty cool, but we're going to switch that back off for now. So we do have the ability to not only customize the existing dashes, but also create our own dashes as well. So we'll start off by creating a very basic dash here, just to give you a basic understanding of how this works. Of course, once again, you can import other people's dashes here as well if you wish to do so, or if you create a really cool dash, you can save it and share it with your mates too. But we're going to click on new quickly here, and that will open up a new window. So for now, we're just going to label this number 1 for simplicity's sake and click on confirm. Obviously, you're just going to want to name it something that's going to make sense later on when you've got a few of these in here. So look, this software works pretty much like Microsoft PowerPoint if you've ever used that. So you've got different layers that you can stack on top of each other, and then those layers can be assigned to different telemetry data to obviously respond to what's going on in real time. So the individual items that are shown on the display are called elements, and then you have configuration options on the right-hand side for each element. So let's just bring in a very basic text box here as an element, and we're going to start off by setting our font size to 100. This is just going to be our gear indicator, and then we're going to change the text to N as the default, and we're going to set our alignment to center and center horizontal as well. And we can see on the right hand side here all the various configuration options pertaining to that particular element. If we want to assign that to actually show the gear that we're in, which obviously we're going to want to do, we're going to click on next to text here and click on this guy. That will allow us then to either write some JavaScript code to do whatever we want if we want to get really creative, or we can click on telemetry here and select here from all the various different telemetry options which are available to us. And as you can see here, there are quite a few to go through. So yeah, we would just find the gear selection from this list and then that would respond to the gear that the car is currently in. We're just going to leave that alone for now. If you want to add other elements as well, you can do things like adding a circle around, and so we're going to drag that into the middle. We can of course increase the size if we wish to. So let's just go 160 by 160. And you can see here we can change things like color and thickness, basically configure this to be however we want. So that gives you a basic understanding of how this tool works, and I'm really excited to see how creative people get with this. But let's just take a quick look at a pre-made dash here as well, just to give you an idea of how powerful this is. So I'm going to open up this guy that has a needle here. And you can see the way this works is the needle itself is an element. And so that needle position is actually adjusted relative to the telemetry data. And you can see all the configuration options on the right-hand side here now to make it do basically whatever you want it to do. So it is a really powerful piece of software. You can, of course, import images to have in the background as well if you wish to. Pretty much you're only limited by your own creativity here. So yeah, again, really excited to see what people come up with. So once you've created a couple of dashes and you're completely happy with them, you can hover over here and see a couple more options. So you can view the instrument. Clicking on that will just give you a visual representation of what the dash looks like. But we also have the option here to do a couple of things. We can copy, export, delete, or rename the dash. So exporting will of course allow you to save this as a file and share it with your mates or the community. Then we have this little button here which allows you to upload this dash to the wheel. So if we click on that, we should see it move across to the left-hand side, and that is now part of the storage on the wheel itself, which means it now becomes one of the options selectable as you scroll up and down on the wheel. And it is as simple as that, guys. So really hope that today's video has helped you out. If you do have any questions, let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you again soon. Enjoy your new wheel. Bye.